My son called a family meeting to discuss what he kept calling my declining health. My daughter-in-law handed me a glass of orange juice before we sat down, smiling that careful smile she always wore around me. My driver pulled me into the hallway and pressed his hand gently against my arm. He leaned close and said 3 words I'll never forget. "Don't drink that." I set the glass on the hallway table. 40 minutes later, my daughter-in-law picked it up and finished it herself. Before I tell you what happened next, drop a comment and let me know. Where are you watching this from? I need to know this story is reaching people who need to hear it. My name is Frank Harrison, and at 67 years old, I had spent 4 decades building Harrison Frieden Logistics into the kind of company other men in Memphis pointed to when they talked about what hard work actually looked like. 19 trucks in 1987, 231 in 2024. Warehousing contracts across 6 states. A net worth that my accountant once told me, with some embarrassment, had crossed $19 million. I had not grown up with money. My father drove a bread delivery route 6 days a week and never once complained about it. I learned from that. I learned that what you build with your hands and your hours belongs to you in a way that inherited things never do. My wife Carol passed 8 years ago, pancreatic cancer. 3 months from diagnosis to the morning, I sat in our kitchen on Willow Oak Drive and understood that the coffee I had made for 2 people would only be drunk by 1. I did not sell the house. Some widowers do. I could not. Carol had chosen the color of every room. The garden in the back still bloomed every May the way she had planned it. My son Kevin had come into the company 4 years ago. He was 41, smart in the surface way that sometimes masks a lack of depth. He dressed well. He talked well in meetings. He had married Claire 2 years before joining the company. Claire, who had worked as a registered nurse for 9 years before she quietly let her license lapse and reinvented herself as a wellness consultant. She had a soft voice and a habit of touching your arm when she talked to you, which I had once mistaken for warmth. Ray Simmons had driven for me for 19 years. He was 58, broad-shouldered, a man of very few words and no wasted movements. He had started as a dock loader when I was still running 12 trucks out of a gravel lot in Bartlett. When my eyesight had required surgery 8 years ago and my doctor told me to stop driving for 6 weeks, I had asked Ray to take me to appointments. He had never really stopped. He drove me to the office each morning, picked me up each evening, handled small repairs around the house on weekends because he said it gave him something useful to do. He called me Mr. Harrison in public and Frank when we were alone in the car. I had paid for his daughter's college tuition without telling him I was doing it, routing the payments through a scholarship fund so it wouldn't embarrass him. He found out eventually. He never mentioned it. That was the kind of man he was. Beginning in late spring of last year, I had started forgetting things. Small things first. A client's name, the date of a contract meeting I had scheduled myself, then larger things. I lost 20 minutes once while sitting at my own desk, and when my assistant Patricia knocked to remind me of a call, I had genuinely not known whether it was morning or afternoon. My doctor ran tests, found nothing conclusive, suggested stress, suggested I was not sleeping enough, suggested I consider whether the pace of running a company at my age was sustainable. I did not appreciate that last suggestion. I had been running this company since before he was in medical school. Claire had started coming by the house more often around that time, bringing food, checking in, asking about my medications with the practiced concern of someone who understood dosages and interactions. Kevin called every few days. "Dad, you seem tired. Dad, we're worried. Dad, let's talk about the future of the company." The word future always had a weight to it when Kevin used it, like it belonged to him more than to me. I mentioned it to Ray one evening in the car. "Something feels rehearsed," I told him, "about all of it." Ray was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I know. I've been watching too." He told me what he had seen 6 weeks earlier, a Tuesday morning, early. He had arrived at the house before I was up because I had an early flight that was later canceled. He had let himself in through the side door, which I had given him a key to years ago for exactly such situations. He had heard movement in the kitchen and assumed it was me. It was Claire, standing at the counter in the gray light, her back to the door, doing something with a prescription bottle that was not hers, crushing something, tapping the powder into my glass of orange juice, the one Patricia always left covered in the refrigerator for my mornings, because I had told her once I never felt like eating before 8 but needed something in my stomach for my blood pressure medication. Claire stirred the glass with a spoon, rinsed the spoon, replaced the plastic wrap over the glass as if she had never touched it. Then she heard Ray's footstep in the doorway. She turned. She smiled. She said she had just stopped by to check on things because Kevin was worried about me. Ray said good morning and nothing else. He had not been certain, he told me. He had not wanted to be wrong about a thing like that. So he had started writing things down. Dates, times, what he observed. He had taken photographs with his phone, not clear photographs, but photographs. He had also started arriving at the house earlier than I expected him, watching. After Ray told me all of this in the car, I did not go home that night. I called my estate attorney instead, Gerald Whitmore, 64, Yale Law, with whom I had worked for 22 years. I told him what Ray had described. Gerald was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Frank, whatever we do next, we do it carefully." 2 days later, I sat in his office and signed documents that transferred the entirety of Harrison Frieden Logistics, the real estate holdings, the investment accounts, and the Willow Oak House into an irrevocable charitable trust, the Harrison Family Foundation. Should I be incapacitated, controlled, or coerced in any way, the trust could not be undone. Kevin was listed nowhere as a beneficiary. If I died without changing the trust, everything went to a foundation for elder care services across Shelby County. Gerald kept the original documents. I kept nothing at the house that could be found. Then I called a security company I had used to sweep my office for corporate espionage once, years ago. I had cameras installed in my kitchen, my study, and the front hallway. Small, professionally placed. I told no one except Ray. I had 2 weeks of footage before Kevin called to schedule the meeting. The morning of that meeting, a Thursday in September, I sat at my kitchen table and watched the driveway. Kevin and Claire arrived at 9:15. Kevin wore a jacket I had bought him last Father's Day because I had thought the gesture might mean something. Claire carried a folder and a canvas bag from a smoothie place downtown. "Healthy choices," she always said. She was thoughtful like that. She went to the refrigerator without asking, poured my orange juice, brought it to the table herself, which she had never done before in the 4 years she had been visiting this house. "Morning, Dad." Kevin kissed my cheek the way he always did, the motion of it slightly ahead of the feeling. Ray appeared in the kitchen doorway. He had pulled the car around early and come inside, which he sometimes did when weather was bad. He caught my eye. A small, steady look. I set the glass down on the table and did not pick it up again. We moved toward the study. Kevin spread papers across my desk. His posture was easy, which told me more than anything he could have said. Men are tense when they are uncertain. Kevin was not tense. "Dad, we've had our estate attorney look at some options regarding a management transition. Given your health situation," his voice went gentle there. "Practiced, we think a temporary power of attorney might be appropriate, just to take the pressure off you while you recover." I said, "What health situation?" Kevin looked at Claire. Claire looked at me. Something moved across her face that she did not intend for me to see. A sound from the hallway. Ray, stepping back in. He looked at the glass still sitting on the kitchen table where I had left it. Then at me. I gave him the smallest nod. 40 minutes later, Claire reached for the glass and drained what was left in 2 swallows. I did not stop her. I did not know if I should have stopped her. I have asked myself that question many times since. What I know is that it happened quickly. She was mid-sentence, something about long-term care consultants she had researched, when her words began to lose their shape. Kevin noticed first. He said her name. She looked at him with unfocused eyes and reached for the arm of her chair. Kevin moved toward her. "What's wrong?" She could not tell him. Her legs went out from under her when she tried to stand. I called 911. Ray was already in the room. He turned her on her side the way someone does when they know what they're doing, which Ray did because he had been through first aid training 3 times over the years because I had required it of every employee who regularly drove for me. Kevin stood back. I watched his face the way I had spent 40 years watching the faces of men across negotiating tables. It was not the face of a husband watching his wife collapse. It was the face of a man running calculations. The ambulance was there in 9 minutes. Kevin rode with Claire. I rode with Ray. In the car, Ray reached into his jacket pocket and placed a small notebook on the seat between us. 62 days of entries. Dates, times, descriptions. Photographs documented inside a separate envelope. Audio from his phone, 3 recordings, 2 of which were clear enough to matter. At Regional 1, a doctor named Marcus Webb came to find me within the hour. He was methodical in the way emergency physicians often are, moving from the immediate facts to the ones underneath. Claire's blood work showed high benzodiazepine levels, a quantity that, combined with body weight and metabolic rate, would have caused significant sedation, possibly respiratory complications in a higher dose. He turned to me and said, "Mr. Harrison, we found chronic low-level benzodiazepine exposure in your own system when we tested you. You've been receiving this for some time." I looked at him. He said, "In small doses over a long period, it presents very similarly to early cognitive decline. Memory gaps, confusion, fatigue." He paused. Someone with a clinical background would know exactly how to calibrate that. A detective arrived before I had finished processing what the doctor had told me. Sandra Park, 43, a woman with the particular economy of motion that comes from having seen most things twice already. She had been called by the hospital under mandatory reporting procedures. Suspected medication tampering. I told her what Ray had told me. I told her about the notebook. She read through it standing up, not sitting, which told me she took it seriously immediately. Then I told her about the cameras. She looked up. "I had installed them 6 weeks ago," I said, "when my driver's account made me understand that my instincts were correct. I have been watching every night. I had hoped I was wrong. I was not wrong." We reviewed the footage that afternoon in a hospital conference room on a laptop Detective Park brought. 17 separate recordings of Claire at my kitchen counter. Her technique was efficient. She had done it enough times that there was no hesitation in her movements. 2 recordings showed Kevin in the frame, once standing in the doorway watching, once at the counter himself on a morning Claire was not present, opening the same prescription bottle, measuring carefully. 1 recording from 3 weeks prior showed them together in my study. Kevin's voice, flat and certain. "The petition for guardianship should be ready by next month. Once that's filed, we don't even need his signature." Claire's voice, "And the company accounts?" Kevin, "Managed under the conservatorship. It's all legal." When the last clip ended, Detective Park closed the laptop. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Mr. Harrison, is there a current will that names your son as primary beneficiary?" I told her about Gerald Whitmore, about the trust, about the documents signed 6 weeks ago and stored in Gerald's office. She looked at me for a long moment. "Your son has been systematically incapacitating you in order to obtain legal control of assets he would never have received through the trust you had already established." "Yes." "Does he know about the trust?" I said, "Not yet." Ray was waiting in the hallway when I came out. He had not eaten anything. He had not left the hospital. He stood when he saw me, and I shook his hand for a long time without saying anything, which was how we both preferred it. "I want to tell you something," I said finally. "My daughter needed spinal surgery 7 years ago. You didn't know I paid for it." He looked at me steadily. "You didn't owe me for that," I said. "You never owed me for anything, but I want you to know whatever comes next, I'm going to take care of you properly, not because of any debt, because you're the only reason I'm standing here." Ray nodded. He said, "I know, Frank. Let's just make sure it counts." The arrests happened 11 days later. Kevin was taken at 6:40 in the morning at his house in Germantown. Claire, still recovering as an outpatient, was arrested at her follow-up appointment. Both charged with conspiracy, elder abuse, criminal tampering with a controlled substance, and financial fraud. The financial forensics had found $280,000 moved from company accounts into a joint account Kevin shared with a shell LLC he had established 18 months earlier. They had also found the guardianship petition already drafted, already signed by Kevin, waiting only for a filing date, and they had found the insurance policy, $4 million on my life, taken out 11 months ago. Kevin listed as the sole beneficiary. The trial began in January. Shelby County Criminal Court, Judge Ann Fredericks presiding. The courtroom was full in the way that courtrooms get full when a story has been in the newspapers long enough that people feel they own a piece of it. Kevin sat at the defense table in a suit I recognized. He had worn it to Carol's funeral. The prosecution was handled by a woman named Dana Cho, 47, precise in the way that good prosecutors are precise, not showy, just clear. She opened by telling the jury what they were about to see. She told them that the defendant had spent nearly a year carefully eroding his own father's mind in order to gain legal control over assets worth $19 million, and that the only reason the defendant had failed was because one person had paid close enough attention to stop it. She called Ray first. Ray walked to the stand, in a jacket I had not seen him wear before. He spoke quietly, without embellishment, the way he spoke about everything. He described what he had seen that Tuesday morning in my kitchen. He described the 62 days of notes. He described the photographs. When the prosecutor asked him why he had not gone to the police himself, he said, "Because Frank Harrison trusted his son. I needed to be sure before I took that away from him." The courtroom was very still. She asked, "And when you finally told him?" Ray said, "He already suspected. He just needed to know he wasn't losing his mind." Kevin's defense attorney, a man named Douglas Reardon, tried during cross-examination to suggest that Ray had a financial interest in the outcome, that a driver of 19 years might expect something substantial if the son was removed from the inheritance picture. Ray looked at Reardon without any visible emotion. He said, "I didn't know anything about a trust when I took those photographs. I drove for Mr. Harrison because he is a decent man and I respected him. That's the whole of it." Then the footage. Dana Cho played it on a screen at the front of the courtroom. 17 clips. Kevin watched 2 of them and then dropped his eyes to the table. The jury watched all 17. A woman in the second row covered her mouth during the clip where Kevin stood at my kitchen counter with the prescription bottle. A man in the back row shook his head slowly and did not stop shaking it. The clip that broke the room was the one in my study. Kevin's voice through the speakers. "Once the conservatorship is in place, we don't even need him to be functional. Just present." The word functional. The way he said it about his father. A juror in the front row looked directly at Kevin. Kevin did not look up. I testified last. I walked to the stand and I told the jury my name and I told them what I had built and why I had built it. I told them about Carol and about the morning after she died and about the 17 years Ray Simmons had driven me through Memphis traffic without ever once making me feel diminished. I told them about the first morning I woke up with genuine confusion, not tiredness, not distraction, but a true gap in time. And how frightening that was for a man who had never in his adult life questioned the reliability of his own mind. Then I looked at Kevin. He was looking at me. Maybe for the first time in that courtroom, he was actually looking at me. I said, "I don't know when I lost you. I think you were lost before I realized you were gone. I blamed myself for a long time. I tried to understand what I could have done differently. I spent 40 years teaching you everything I knew about running a business, about reading people, about not showing weakness when the room is watching. I wonder sometimes if I also taught you, without meaning to, that the end of a thing was all that mattered." My voice held. "The poison wasn't the worst part," I said. "The worst part was every morning, sitting across from you at my own kitchen table, believing we were building something together. You asking about my health, you asking about my plans, and all the while, understanding exactly what you were doing to me and choosing to keep doing it." I looked away from him. "I changed my will because I knew what you were capable of, not because I stopped loving you, but because I refused to let what I built become a reward for what you did." The jury deliberated for 7 hours. When they returned, the foreperson read each count in a voice that did not waver. "Guilty, guilty, guilty. For Claire the same. Guilty on all counts." Judge Frederick sentenced both of them to 22 years. No possibility of parole before 15. They put Kevin in handcuffs at the defense table. He stood. He was walked toward the door. He turned once and looked at me with something I had never seen in his face before. It was not remorse. It was not grief. It was the particular rage of a man who had been absolutely certain he was smarter than everyone around him and had discovered, in the worst possible way, that he was not. 2 weeks after the verdict, Gerald Whitmore called me. Kevin had been informed, through his attorney, of the contents of the irrevocable trust. Gerald told me, with the quiet professionalism of a man who had delivered many pieces of news in his career, that Kevin had refused lunch that day, had sat in his cell for 6 hours before speaking again. When he finally spoke, he said 4 words to his cellmate. "I got nothing, nothing. The Harrison Family Foundation opened its offices in downtown Memphis on a Tuesday morning in March, in a building on Poplar Avenue with large windows and a front desk, where survivors of elder financial abuse could walk in off the street and immediately speak to someone who understood exactly what they had been through. We employed 2 attorneys, a licensed social worker, a forensic accountant who specialized in tracing the kind of small, careful financial transfers that family members use when they think they are being subtle, and a community outreach coordinator who had herself spent 3 years fighting her own family in probate court over her mother's estate. Ray Simmons became our head of security and operations. He managed our client safety protocols, our home visit programs, our emergency relocation procedures for clients who could no longer safely remain in their own homes. He commanded the organization's trust immediately and completely, in the way that people who have already proven themselves under pressure always do. He wore the same practical jackets. He still drove me to the office on most mornings. We still talked more honestly in the car than we did anywhere else. Patricia Owens, who had been my office manager at Harrison Freet for 22 years and who had always left my orange juice covered in the refrigerator every morning without once being asked, joined the foundation as our director of client intake. She brought with her an attention to detail and a memory for names and circumstances that made every person who walked through our door feel accounted for. Within our first 8 months, we had worked with 41 families. We recovered over $900,000 in misappropriated assets. We supported prosecution in 6 cases that resulted in criminal convictions. We relocated 11 elderly men and women from situations that their own families had made dangerous. One case stayed with me the way certain cases do. A man named Harold Greer, 73, a retired high school principal from Collierville. His son had been forging his signature on refinancing documents for 20 months. Harold had discovered it not through any drama but through a letter from a lender that arrived while his son was at work, asking him to confirm his intent to access the equity line for the 3rd time in 2 years. Harold had not known there was a second time, let alone a third. He came to our office alone on a Wednesday afternoon, holding the letter in both hands. When we walked him through the full picture, the refinancing, the equity withdrawals, the small retirement account transfers that his son had structured to fall just under the reporting threshold, Harold sat very still. Then he said, "I put that boy through school. I paid for his wedding. I taught him that a man's word was the most valuable thing he owned." He looked at me directly. "You understand that," he said, "don't you?" I told him I did. He nodded slowly. Then he said, "What do we do now?" We did what we always did. We documented. We filed. We stood beside him in court. His son was convicted on 9 counts of financial exploitation of an elderly adult. Harold kept his house. He kept what was left of his retirement. He kept his dignity, which was the part that had never been his son's to take in the first place. Harold came to our foundation gala that November. He shook Ray's hand for a long time. He told Patricia she reminded him of a librarian he had loved in the 3rd grade, which made Patricia laugh in a way she did not often laugh at work. I am 68 now. A year past the morning my driver saved my life with 3 quiet words in a hallway. I take my real blood pressure medication at the same time every morning. My mind is clear in the way it was before last spring, which I am grateful for in a way that is difficult to explain to anyone who has not experienced its absence. The fatigue is gone. The gaps are gone. I remember client names, contract dates, the color of every room in my house on Willow Oak Drive. Kevin has written to me twice from Hardeman County Correctional. I have not opened the letters. Ray keeps them in the car's glove compartment because he said it felt wrong to throw them away, but understood why I wasn't ready to read them. They are still there. Maybe one day. What I know now that I did not fully know before. The most dangerous thing a man can do is confuse familiarity with trustworthiness. Kevin had been in my life for 41 years. I knew the sound of his footstep in a hallway. I knew how he took his coffee. I knew the particular way his voice changed when he was covering something. And still I did not see it until it was almost too late, because I was looking with the eyes of a father and not the eyes of a man who has spent 40 years reading people. Ray saw it. Patricia saw it. The people who watched me because they respected me, not because they stood to gain from me. I think about what I would say to any man in his 60s watching this, some evening when his children seem a little too concerned, when the meetings about the future of the company happen a little too often, when his medications seem to be affecting him in ways they never used to. I would say, trust the people who have nothing to gain from lying to you. Trust the person who shows up at the right time, not because they were scheduled to, but because something in them said they should. Trust the employee who keeps notes in a small spiral notebook for 62 days because they are not certain, and certainty matters to them, and so do you. I would also say, get your affairs in order while your mind is your own. Do not wait until someone hands you a glass of something and smiles that practiced smile. The Harrison Foundation now operates in 3 counties. We are funded by the assets that were recovered through Kevin's prosecution and through a number of private donors, including Gerald Whitmore, who gave the single largest contribution of anyone outside the family and did not ask for his name on anything. Classic Gerald. Ray and I still have coffee in the car some mornings when traffic is slow and there is nowhere pressing to be. We talk about cases, about the foundation, about a fishing trip we have been planning for 3 years and have not yet taken. He still calls me Mr. Harrison in public and Frank when no one is listening. I still prefer it that way. Last spring, on the first morning of May, Carol's garden came up the way it always does. The same lilacs she planted in 2003. The same climbing roses along the east fence that she had chosen from a catalog and circled in pencil and shown me with the particular happiness of a woman who knew exactly what she wanted. I stood at the kitchen window with a cup of coffee, my coffee, made by my own hands, from beans I ground myself, because some habits you build for good reason, and then you keep them. Ray pulled up at 7:15. I brought 2 cups out to the car. We sat in the driveway for a while without talking. The garden looked the way Carol had always meant for it to look. There is something I have learned about legacy. It is not the company. It is not the number of trucks or the square footage of the warehouses or the line on the balance sheet. It is the people who chose to be honest, when dishonesty would have cost them nothing. It is the driver who kept a notebook for 62 days because the truth mattered to him. It is the 63 families who walked through a door on Poplar Avenue and found that someone on the other side already understood exactly what had been done to them. That is what I am building now, and no one can take it from me, because no one can forge a signature on it, drain it into a shell account, or dissolve it in a morning glass of orange juice. If this story reached you, please share it. There is an elderly person somewhere near you who is being managed by someone they love, and they do not yet have a Ray Simmons in their life. Maybe you can be that person for them. Drop a comment below and tell me where you're watching from. And if this story matters to you, subscribe to KT Sweet Revenge. I will keep telling the truth for as long as there are people who need to hear it.